Hello and welcome back to the Undercut podcast. It is time to review the 11th race of the year, the Hungarian Grand Prix. I'm your host, Jesse Billington, and joining me once again is none other than Mr. Thiemo Albers-Daly. How are you?
Refreshed and sort of happy to be looking forward to this summer break. It's been an interesting first half of the season, but I'm not necessarily going to be complaining that we're summer break. It would be nice to step back for a minute, which I don't know if I like that I'm saying that or not, but here we are anyway. How are you?
I'm in much the same frame of mind, I think. I had a busy weekend juggling watching the Grand Prix and reporting from Silverstone for the BRDC Classic and Festival of the Unexceptional in Lincolnshire. So I've been racking up the miles and the data allowance on my phone to stay abreast of everything and get everything done. But I think we've had a good weekend all in, all things considered.
It's yeah, yes and no. I think the good's been good, the bad's been bad, and then I think there's possibly one piece of happy news that we'll get to that potentially makes the weekend look a bit better in hindsight than it maybe was.
Yeah, it's very mixed. We'll dive into the first bit of news then in that case. And the first news was that this weekend we had a new safety car. It's not easy to tell because of the way they're liveried up and the fact that the two look very much the same. But gone is the old C190 series AMG GT Black Series. In comes the C192 second generation of Mercedes Sports Coupe. It launched with a special livery celebrating 30 years of Mercedes safety cars in Formula One. The first one was the C36 AMG Saloon, obviously, back in 1996.
I'm not one to be across absolutely everything, so I may have missed this in the build up to the weekend, but this to me at least seemed to come out of slightly nowhere. I don't feel like there was much of an announcement beforehand. It was just here's a new safety car in the same way that they'd suddenly named all of the corners around the Hungaroring, and you go, was this always happening, or is this something we decided on a meeting on Wednesday and just decided to do it for Friday? It seemed a little bit just sudden and left of centre.
Yeah, the corner names thing. Was there a reason behind that?
Not no idea other than to confuse certain people who, if you're looking at your phone or you're just casually watching and you hear in Formula 2 or Formula 3 two drivers overtaking and then Schumacher or Senna's thrown in, you go, oh, I didn't know there was a relative racing in Formula 2 or Formula 3. No, no, no. It's the corner name. That's going to happen quite a bit now, actually.
Yeah, we had PK, we had Mansell, we had Schumacher,
And
Hamilton,
Lacey.
Lacey. I think the best ones of the bunch were Driving School and Buddha and
Mm.
Pest. I like Buddha and Pest because so many people went, "Oh, why have they done that?" And I'm like, a quick Google would reveal the fact that Budapest, the capital of Hungary, is technically made up of two ancient cities that opposed each other on the river. Yeah, um, maybe it was just Americans that I found on the internet that were confused by other places having geography and interesting history before 1776. Who knows? Um, Speaking of history, there were two drivers that set personal benchmarks when it comes to history. Alex Albon reaching his 100th Grand Prix with Williams, which I mean, they've not all been very good. Um,
Not because of Albon, no.
no,
Importantly, he's
not
doing his best.
not for lack of trying on his half. However, flip side, Lance Stroll has now started his 200th Grand Prix with Aston Martin, and admittedly, I knew this was coming up. So I wrote it as started because there was no guarantee that he would finish his 200th Grand Prix with Aston Martin, just in his career. Um, but yeah, this
Regardless
makes
of it being with Aston
Aston
Martin or not.
Martin. Yes, yes. So this is a 200th Grand Prix, and this makes him one of the most experienced drivers in the sport's history. Overtakes Alain Prost to join 24 other drivers who have spent that much or more time in the sport.
Would you like to know a fun fact?
Go on.
So he's contested in 200 Grand Prix. He scored points in 66 of them, which is a 33% conversion rate. And the last time he scored points was Abu Dhabi of last year, and before that was Zandvoort and Budapest.
Wow.
33%.
That's not a good
You
hit
can
rate.
see why they keep him.
I don't think you get a GCSE in the UK if you had a hit rate of 33%.
You don't get much if you get 33% in anything, really.
And you get a lot of vodka, I suppose, for about 33%.
You might need it if that's how you're performing.
Very true. However, in more positive news, and something interesting enough that somehow I think does relate to Lance Stroll and his long tenure in Formula One, is the fact that the Malaysian Grand Prix is back, but it's now the Bahrain Grand Prix. Um,
I
so
get
this,
why they've done it, but it's just so incredibly funny because obviously the reason it's called the Bahrain Grand Prix is because Bahrain are footing the bill.
yes,
However, as a headline and as a title, it's so stupid because instead of going with what I would have thought would be perfectly reasonable idea of the Malaysian Grand Prix sponsored by Bahrain, whatever, in the same way that they do for Emirati Airlines or whatever else you want to use, they've gone, it's the Bahrain Grand Prix in Malaysia. I was like, well, it's not the Bahrain Grand Prix then, is it? Because it's literally in Malaysia. At what point has anyone ever gone, where is Bahrain? Asia. Where is Malaysia? The Middle East. Never happened. Well, unless it's the same people that you're talking to on the internet that is trying to figure out what Budapest is on about.
yeah, it's a very odd decision in the branding. Again, I can understand why they've done it, but
Hmm.
it's just so
You'd
clumsy. They
think
don't.
someone must have just said there must be an ego thing somewhere on that because I just think logic wise it doesn't make sense. But that being said, Malaysia's back. That's the important thing. We'll take it while we can because it should never have happened in the first place, really, should it?
Yes, yeah, it's nice. It falls between Baku and Singapore on the calendar, giving us a triple header there. Though with those two massive straights on the course, the front straight and the back
Hmm.
straight essentially opposing each other with a small hairpin in the middle, it could be a challenge for super clipping. So that's going to be very interesting to see the battery states of charge.
Those are the only two problem areas as such, though, because the rest of the circuit is
Quite
just about
fast,
all right. It's quite fast, but you've got, the first two, three corners,
very
they
slow.
would be good for recharge. You've got a bit of a straight, but it's not too long. Then you've got break corners. You've got stuff to work with by the time that you get to that first back straight. It's okay, yeah, that's going to make you see what people do there and how that changes from lap to lap. So then, obviously, like you say, you've got a small recharge before going again, and you're potentially going to have a lot of duking it out going into that final corner and then going into the first turns and then maybe having to figure out what you're doing. There is a wide track as well in places, so the overtaking options are, in theory, everywhere, which is not something we've been able to say at any point, I don't think, so far this season. China's maybe the closest one we've had to Malaysia in that kind of
Mhm.
layout, which combine that with where it is in the calendar in terms of time, monsoon season, we could get a wet race with that. Or we, I don't want to
Could
get
be
ahead of
on something
myself, but there's a
interesting.
lot of potential there.
Yeah, it's a very wide circuit, but much like China, where we have that sort of long back straight with a big dive braking zone and then the sort of front straight through the start finish line, it's just going to be a case of you just be the second person to press the boost button. That's going to be the person that gets the overtake because then you get into the slow braking zone. You're not really going to be able to fight back through there because your car's really going to need to super clip going into it if you did it on the first section. And then you're just sort of stuck behind possibly while your car recharges. So we'll see how it goes. That's me being cynical. However, the interesting thing is obviously uh,
Technically,
Malaysia
yes,
hasn't been around since what
2017.
2017, yeah. Which means that of the current drivers on the grid, 12 have not raced around that circuit, which is quite a
Which is
fun fact.
excellent.
Yeah, haven't raced around that circuit in Formula One, I should say.
Hmm.
Charles Leclerc and I think I might be saying it was Alex Albon did it in GP2 or GP3 at the time, GP3 at the time in 2016, and Charles also did an FP1 session for Ferrari there. But yeah, would you like to guess who the other drivers are, or just sort of name off the top of your head who they might
You
be
have or haven't done it,
who haven't done it? I've already given
haven't.
you Charles and Alex.
Oh well, it's obviously going to be the likes of Imi and Hadjar and Behrman and Colapinto. What number is that up to? Lando's in there as well. Piastri is probably in there.
Hmm.
How many am I missing?
Three more.
Three more? Jeez. Crikey, who have we got? Oh, Lawson will be in
Yep.
there. Lindblad will
Yep.
obviously be in there. Um, and there's going to be one other pesky driver running around somewhere. Who am I missing? I don't know. George?
Yeah, George.
Perfect. I consider him old enough for him. He should have been there, but he wasn't, obviously.
Yes, yeah. So it's quite an interesting roster of the drivers that are there, and of course, Checo once podiumed there when he was in
He
Force
was trying
India
to
with
beat
Sauber.
Alonso
Sauber,
for the
so quite a
win.
lot.
Yeah,
Yeah.
with Force India, I think.
Yeah, so they've a lot of the drivers there have had some we've had some really interesting and good podiums there for quite some time. So it's going to be very interesting going back. This installation to the grid does mean that the final leg of the season, it'll be 9 races in 11 weeks across 3 triple headers. Baku, Malaysia, Singapore, Kota, Mexico, Brazil, Vegas, Qatar, Abu Dhabi, assuming those final two go ahead. There is no word on what's replacing Saudi Arabia just yet, though
If
sources
anything,
if anything, those sources suggest that it could be Turkey, Portimao, or Imola. And obviously, looking at that calendar, it might have to go towards the end of the season. And I mean, it was cold when
this
we
is why
raced
I'm
it.
hoping it's none of those. Because
Yeah,
Turkey would be exception because I just don't think a season finale at either Imola or Portimao would really work as terms of okay, we'll go home now.
mm,
Um, I'd rather we just do what we were talking about a few episodes ago, and you
Vegas
just
finale
do a
from that.
double header in Brazil, if anywhere, and then have the finale in Vegas and be done with it,
Yeah,
and just chalk it up to
one of those years.
yeah.
Yeah, because if you remember 2020 when we raced at the Nürburgring in early
Hmm.
October and it was 5 degrees. Um,
That I enjoyed. Why is that not on the list? That
Yeah,
should be
well, we
something.
should go back to that. I don't think Imola, which is in sort of the hilly regions of northern Italy, is going to be any warmer come December. Um,
Yeah, no. Might as well go back to Montreal for that and just do ice racing.
I was going to say, I don't think Pirelli makes snow tires for Formula One cars. It would just be using the wets. But even
The other suggestion I want, just because you could just about bullshit it enough, and I think you'll have to correct me if I'm wrong if you know the answer, but in theory, Indianapolis, the road course, it would be available.
yeah, it would be available. I'd be
This would
kind
be a
of
hell of a way to try and paper over that particular crack in F1
however,
history now that you're back on speaking terms with the US.
however, Indianapolis weather in December, highs of four
I'm
degrees.
just thinking geographically it's in the right area. So it
Geographically,
makes
it's in the
sense on the
right
calendar.
area, yeah. But highs of four, lows of -5. We saw trouble with keeping tires alive on the banking last time. It's going to be even trickier just trying to get grip going around the banked section of the bowl.
Alternatively, we're already in Vegas. Let's revive Long Beach.
That might be warmer. That is very true. But anyway, it's all still to be decided. But we now have the Malaysian Grand Prix back in the form of the Bahrain Grand Prix. It's kind of weird. Anyway, with that out of the
But we're
way,
here to talk about Hungary.
we're here to talk about Hungary, so let's do that. We'll dive into our team by team analysis, and we'll kick off with championship leaders Mercedes. George Russell qualifies sixth, finishes seventh. Kimi Antonelli, well, doesn't qualify seventh. He qualifies what, third on the grid, but ends up starting the race from seventh place and finishing
In all
third
those
after
episodes.
taking a grid penalty for what was it? Not slowing down appropriately for yellow flags.
Yeah, pretty much. It was oh, what the hell do you even call Russell's weekend at this point? Because we talk about not having any luck aside from bad luck, and then it just keeps going worse and has this issue in qualifying where it's what the water leak this time after it's supposed to being anti. Oh no, the anti-stall was in the race. Whatever it was in Spa that was the issue.
His battery
Seems losing
charge
track at
system
this point.
hadn't been
Yes,
coded
that's the one.
correctly.
Yeah, software glitch followed by a water leak, followed by anti-stall at the beginning of the Grand Prix to send him essentially to the back, for him to then just recover to one place behind where he started, whilst Antonelli somehow manages to get a podium out of all of that. Um, it does, smack of Vettel, Weber, Norris, Piastri, Verstappen, anyone sort of teammate dynamics at this point because you think, what have they done to that second car in the team to give it such bad luck and bad juju so consistently across at least part of a season? Um, he needs a Norris style second half of the season, does Russell, because I don't know how else he's supposed to bounce back from this because he's not doing anything wrong. especially these last two Grand Prix in particular. Um, what's he supposed to do against a software glitch, against a water leak, against stalling, or anti-stall rather? Um, you can't do anything. And so he's just out there doing his best, and he's just getting screwed over for it as a result. And Antonelli just keeps extending that championship lead.
Yeah, it was a really good salvage attempt from him. At least we can say that
Hmm.
in a positive sense. His drive back through the field was really good, but also what it does highlight is the pace differential of that front pack is that you use up so much car, so much tire, so much charge to get up to them. And the fact that the back marker of that top six is Hadjar, and he's not a slouch to catch up to is the thing. So you're sort of left with
George's luck is that he gets to the second Red Bull for 1 year. It's actually good
yeah,
for the first time in about a decade.
yeah, it's such a tricky dynamic for him. And we've said this about George Russell before. If he didn't have bad luck, he'd have no luck at all. And this is the
Hmm.
most extreme example of that, where everything across a weekend that can go wrong does go wrong, and he's just left sort of high and dry to almost deal with it himself. And the team doesn't seem to be behind him either, which I think is the most telling and troubling part for his season to come, is the fact that I think Mercedes knows which way it's leaning this year, and yeah, there's not
Which,
Mercedes like
considering
seafoam.
a point you're going to make later when we talk about a few other drivers, is insane when you think about how many drivers are actually still relatively in contention. You only need one bad weekend for any one of these top three drivers in the championship, and for it to be good for the level three, and it closes up surprisingly quickly.
Yeah, well, I mean, post Hungary, where are we at? We're at let's see who's got the biggest gap to Antonelli, really is the thing. The biggest
I'm
gap to
guessing
Antonelli,
Stroll.
219 points. Yeah, it's Bottas, Perez, and Stroll at the moment, and technically Alonso, but only by 1 point. Um, I mean, Albon and Sainz aren't doing particularly well either, considering the matter, nor are the likes of Ocon or Hulkenberg. But I mean, they're mathematically still in contention. But you look at like the top six, the top seven in the field, even they're
Hmm.
all within 100 points or so. I mean, you've only got to think back to last year when we look at, and I get onto it in a bit, but when I get to McLaren more
Way of
important,
Verstappen.
is the fact that, yeah, Norris Verstappen, when you look at how far back Verstappen came from last season to challenge Norris, there are still things that you can do, but Verstappen wasn't fighting his teammate, he was fighting another team and had an entire team backing him up to do it. And then also had Yuki, where possible, sort of doing a bit of extra defending.
So it's the
Hadjar's
entire team and his teammate occasionally.
Yeah, when possible. But even this weekend, like Hadjar was a bit of a rolling roadblock for a lot of drivers trying to come through the field.
Hmm.
He put up a really good fight when it came to a bit of defense. It was nothing like over the line, nothing huge like sort of the icon of Perez 2021 Abu Dhabi, but it was still some good moves here and there just to make people use a bit of charge, use a bit of tire, just take a little bit more life out of their race than they really wanted to when coming past him. And that's exactly the sort of small impacts that a second driver can have. And the problem is Russell now faces the fact that he doesn't have someone doing that for him in his corner and has to go against his own teammate in a car that seems to be increasingly fragile and yeah, just the world conspiring against him. So while he might be in that sort of top six drivers in the field at the moment in the championship, it's not a good one
Yeah,
for
you kind of get the feeling that if he doesn't do what Norris was somehow able to do last year, he's going to end up with Piastri's bad luck from last year instead and go, okay, so you weren't leading the championship, but you're also going to lose it by a lot. And you go, where is the good part of that deal for me? Because none of that sounds particularly pleasant.
every weekend for Russell from here on out is going to be Piastri levels of Baku, and that's or it doesn't seem unlikely that that could happen to the poor guy because it's again not for anything he's doing. He's driving really
Hmm.
well. His start, admittedly, was a bit on him. He didn't get his launch right, and that's why the anti-stall kicked in. Whether or not he had built up the revs enough, dropped the clutch to the right point, that's sort of still to be debated. But even then, he drove really well to recover it. He's clearly at home in the car when it works, but it's that question of when it works. And it's a very fickle and fragile car, and the McLaren is as well for different reasons. But yeah, and also it's getting to Kimi as well. He's getting a bit rattled with a lot of the problems and the fact that he doesn't have a second seater gunning for him. He's never really had that either, because if you think back to all the feeder series, it's you, yourself, and your car.
Hmm.
And last year he was very much the second gunner to Russell more often than not. So this year he's also looking
But
to
he's
make
also
the
not really
championship.
needing one.
Well, no, he doesn't need one, but also things are starting to unravel for him. He had that messy qualifying. He dropped a few grid places. It would have been useful to have his teammate up there to act as sort of like a back marker or to do a bit of defending and to hold people up. And he didn't have that sort of teammate to race up to and act as sort of a benchmark as a also a tire test as well to know what your teammates' tires are doing based on the pace you're expecting them to extract. You haven't got that data pool to pull from. And we've seen Kimi start to struggle a little bit over the past couple of rounds. It's not been going great for him, sometimes through bad luck, Silverstone with his car falling apart, sometimes for his own luck where he mucks around in qualifying and finds out. And it it's going to be really interesting to see sort of which team can offer just the most stability, whether that's in the car, whether that's in its drivers, to pull through for this championship. And again, this is why I'm quite excited about the fact that it is still fairly not open or close in both positive senses in the championship, is the fact that Lewis could still do this if he just
This
stays
is
really
you saying
consistent.
this, it's that levelness of the overall team, and you've got to say, out of the top three, heck, out of all of the teams actually on the grid, because again, you go past Red Bull and you're not really considering them for either championship anyway. It is Ferrari, weirdly, even with the hiccups that they're making. Hamilton still has finished every single sprint and every single Grand Prix in the points. Leclerc is still there, maybe a bit anonymous at points, but Leclerc proved that works pretty damn well for you before. He did it in 24. Russell did that last year as well in 25. Um, and yeah, you come away from a race like this where third Grand Prix in a row where Hamilton gets a penalty for something absolutely infuriating. Um, a lot of infuriating penalties across all three series this weekend, but he still gets a solid set of points, finishes ahead of Russell, which is key because it's at least one opponent less to deal with immediately, or is less of a threat. Okay, it's still a small gap between the two, but it's better than nothing. And that not getting the podium will smart, but he's still. It's weird to go into the summer break thinking he's the main contender for the championship up against Kimi because it doesn't feel like it. But he could do what we've seen F2 and F3 champions of late do and just win it on consistency rather than outright dominance, which would be a weird way to see him win because we're so used to him dominating.
Yeah, it'll be a very different side to Lewis. I mean, we might as well get into Ferrari. We've led to that point quite naturally. Hamilton qualifies. Well, no, he doesn't qualify fifth. Where did he qualify initially?
Well, it's second
Second, yeah, and but actually takes the race start from fifth and goes on to finish fifth, but he should have finished fourth, but was
or
demoted to
third.
fifth or third possibly, really depending on sort of how his race went. Leclerc, meanwhile, qualifies technically second or starts from the grid in second place, but would finish fourth. Um, and yeah, I mean, your note says damage limitation for both after an infuriating Grand Prix. You've already mentioned Lewis's penalties there, and I agree. It's but it's still a strong performance across the board from Ferrari. It's just a few little bits here and there. Tire management is still a bit of guesswork, but they worked hard to save a set of soft tires for the Grand Prix, so they're clearly planning ahead. And there's a lot of potential in the overall setup, the drivers, the car, the team around it, the fact they're nailing the pit stops. Their stop for, was it Hamilton, I think, this weekend was absolutely on the money. They had an absolute flyer of a stop. And the previous year, I think last year, they had the record for the fastest pit stop across the season. They're sort of nearly sub
And that
two
was in
seconds.
Budapest, I think, as
Yeah.
well.
The fact is that at the moment, Fred Vasseur has got that unit clicked. We've got driver engineers that know how to communicate to their driver, get the information across they need, manage the driver's expectations, emotions, pace, the car. We've got everything we need. We just need to find that final few percent just to get the last element out of it. And then, while they might not win every Grand Prix from here to the end of the season, they're just going to
They
do it
don't
on
need to.
consistency. No, they just need to go second, third, second, third, second, third, second, third, all the way to the end of the year and let everyone else scrap for P1. Meanwhile, they're
Hmm.
just there constantly getting that 18 and 15 points.
I was thinking, what does it remind me of? And I just sort of realized that it's not on the same level yet because obviously they don't have the championship to go with it to back it up. But it does strike me as very Alex Palou-esque of I don't need to win everything. to win everything. I can just like if my bad day is fifth, that's still not a bad day really, because everyone else's bad day is 12th or a DNF,
Yeah,
something along those lines. Whereas their bad days at the moment are, well, we're still pretty solid actually. So, frustrating, but we're still in it. Whereas, McLaren are all over the place. Yeah, they have a win this weekend, but we've seen how quickly that can change as well. You look at last time they were in relatively contention for a win back in, what was it, Miami, all the way back there, and it didn't work out for them on that occasion. Never mind the start of the season, reliability with those Mercedes power units is still very much in play. That could happen to either one of those two drivers.
mm,
Ferrari, knock on wood, still hasn't had anything like that. Not just with them, but with any of their customers either. So
yeah,
that's quite interesting. For all the problems Cadillac are having, that ain't one of them.
yeah. The engine and gearbox
Um,
is fine. Haas haven't had any issues either.
hmm,
I mean, Canada is a great example for McLaren having an archetypical or sort of bad weekend where they had a DNF and an 11th and everything was
hmm.
going wrong for them there. And you look at all the other teams, they've had these weekends where it has all gone wrong. But you look at Leclerc and Hamilton, and it's just not there. Leclerc in Monaco and Barcelona, two very different sort of reasons. But that's about it. And again, the Barcelona one, what was his problem in Barcelona? I can't remember.
It was the suspension, I think, wasn't it? Front suspension?
Could have been a front suspension, but Monaco certainly wasn't a Ferrari car issue.
No.
That was the road falling apart. And yeah, so bar one incident, we've only seen the Ferrari actually go wrong visibly with any impact on the outcome of a race once. And the fact that
And it was still a Grand Prix where the teammate won.
yeah,
So it was still the maximum damage limitation if you're going to be in that situation.
yeah, when you look at how the team have scored so well across the weekends and you look at the sort of constructor standings, while it looks like Mercedes have stormed away, Ferrari are keeping pace with them. 379 points plays
The gap between
307.
Mercedes and Ferrari is smaller than the gap
Gap
from Ferrari
Mercedes
to
to
McLaren.
McLaren. Yeah. That's the really important part here is how close that gap actually is. And yeah, just sort of you look through it, sort of what constitutes a bad weekend on paper from the season so far for every
Hmm.
other team. And it's DNSs, it's DNFs, it's all sorts of problems marring it. Red Bull with Verstappen having DNFs and Hadjar even having DNFs. Um, uh, uh, but Ferrari just it's water off a duck's back, and that consistency could really push them through the second half of what we've already said is going to be a flat out season if we get all the races that are scheduled. That's a lot of stress, and at the moment the Ferrari just seems unstressed by everything that's thrown at it, whether it's heat, whether
And
it's
again, you,
harder.
you look at Malaysia as well, hot, humid, potentially wet, but with a driver that has good history there,
Yeah,
and mostly. Um, and you go, okay, yeah, I'm not suggesting that the 12 drivers who haven't been there are going to all struggle and not know what to do, and they're all just going to fly off the circuit. But they are a team that have at least one driver who knows everything he needs to about that circuit and can teach his teammates enough for him to be fine. Whereas other teams, they're just going to have to be figuring it out. You look at Mercedes, neither driver been there. McLaren, same. Red Bull, don't. But again, of the top four teams, that's it. You've got the only team, only two teams where they've got one driver in there that knows how to deal with a circuit like that, and the Grand Prix like that could make the difference. If you've got gravel traps there, you've got grass there. That could be one of those times where you just have to be consistent and finish, and that's gonna swing pendulum one way or the other come the end of the championship.
yeah. Ironically, of all things, Cadillac and Aston Martin are the best place to deal with Malaysia when it comes because their driver lineups have raced there before and consistently.
And in theory, they'll be far enough back that anything that does happen will be in front of them, so they just have to drive around it.
Yeah, again, they can just be the ones that capitalize on the chaos that happens around them. It is fascinating to look at and think, maybe that's the weekend we see sort of quadruple points for the back markers of the field. But yeah, I mean, for Ferrari, it's interesting to see how they're going to develop. And also, they are developing as well. They're bringing little tweaks, they're bringing little
Mm.
adjustments. Every weekend, there's like a small change. There's something that gets updated, something that's revised, adapted, renewed. And we've not seen a Ferrari team visibly do that for quite some time. They just go, here's our car that we find till the end of the season. Whereas this year, it's subtle, it's small, it's little adjustments, but it's little adjustments where they then seem to also be listening to what the drivers have said about what that adjustment has done, and then know when they need to go backwards or change it further or make an alteration. And you go, "Uh, what?
We're not used to this.
Yeah, you've not done
We've not
this
seen this
before.
in a
You've
couple
not
of
done this for a
decades.
long time. This is nice." Um, Meanwhile, speaking of upgrades, McLaren. Piastri qualifies or starts the race from third rather, but goes on to DNF. Norris sticks it on pole and wins the race. But in true Norris style, doesn't lead going through the come out have the lead coming out the first section of the Grand Prix.
Traditions.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's such a tale of two halves, this one, because and in Budapest of all places, this track and McLaren and this particular lineup just does not, it works and it doesn't at both extremes at the same time. And it's infuriating because just when we thought, the one good thing about them not being at the front this year is that we're not going to have to deal with papaya bloody rules. Never mind, we get to Budapest. What comes back? You guessed it. And you get a series of events that follow when Norris says about pitting initially before Piastri, and he's told that we can't do that, and he questions it and says, "I'm a lot faster," despite the fact that he doesn't overtake him, as is always the way with drivers who claim to be faster, they then never actually get past the driver ahead of them. Um, and then you get a very what I will call convenient set of circumstances that then allows McLaren to get away with saying, we didn't do anything, that's just the race. But it just happens to have worked out in such a way that we can avoid making a decision one way or the other here, which last year and the year before was obviously frustrating because there was championship potential. But this year is somehow even more frustrating because technically, as we were saying, there is, but not realistic, for me at least. So why do you feel the need to put yourself into this situation again? And it just was one of the many things that left a bit of a bitter taste, I think, in a lot of people's mouths. Because again, you go, okay, if you are fast Lando, then go and overtake him and do it. You shouldn't need to have the pit priority. And sure enough, he was quicker in the end. You see the lap times he's doing, the gap he pulls. But if you had that speed anyway, then why did you need circumstances to be favored towards you? Why not just go and do the thing?
yeah, it's you're supposed to be a world champion driver, and you still need your team, you still need to ask for your teammate to let you through so you can go and be quicker. If you genuinely feel that you have that much pace and that much ability, you should just be able to drive past him. But also the pace difference is so marginal, that delta is so small that it's very tricky to overtake. We often say you need sort of like a delta of 0.8 of a second over a lap to be able to drive past your teammate. And while Lando might be quicker, it might only be by 0.2 of a second. And therefore, yes, you're technically being held up, but it's so marginal that you can't make that move on one lap without making a big send. But also, in theory, you should have been able to read the road and gone, my teammate is clearly saving his tyres to go long on this stint to try and make the second leg a bit easier. I should just be able to send it past him. Or if I should be able to make a move and he won't fight it because he's on a conservation strategy. But there just isn't that
Or you do
confidence.
something that Verstappen did and just go, I will just send it.
Yeah, a
And it
lovely double
works.
move in one go. Perfect. But, or well, some of the Formula 2 and Formula 3 guys are doing that as well. It was beautiful. But,
It's Oliver Montoya. Well, no, maybe not. It's
no, that didn't go off particularly well.
very
Um,
funny, though.
it very, very funny. Especially Montoya's reaction in the pit lane, going, "What the hell was he doing?" But yeah, it's an interesting one watching Norris now fighting to try and claw his way into a championship as the defending champion. And technically, he's close to it. He is closer to Antonelli than Verstappen was to Norris last season, but there's a greater disparity in the cars this year is the thing. And
And the drivers.
yeah, I want to agree with you there. Yeah, Antonelli could and should win.
Statistically alone. Oh,
Yeah.
I thought I was going about Verstappen, but Antonelli too.
Oh, yeah. I think certainly this year against Antonelli, yeah, when you look at the fact that it was Verstappen chasing down Norris, we had a certified four-time world champion hunting down a still relatively unproven driver versus a
A
one-time
one-time
champion
champion chasing down a
chasing down,
19-year-old,
yeah, who is the next wunderkind, who has been like,
but still
hey,
doesn't have anything to his name aside from some Grand Prix wins. You
yeah,
know, he's chasing down a second season driver in a bit and admittedly a good car, but you are also the defending champion.
yeah. I will say though, Lando Norris, as it stands, 12 wins. How many has Antonelli got to his record at the moment?
Six, I think, got half
He's
in once in half a
six.
season.
Yeah,
Then Norris has gotten in best part of a decade.
yeah. I'll leave you to draw your own conclusions, but it's
I feel like you were trying to make a different point there, and then the
no,
maths
no,
didn't work out for you.
that no, that was the point I was trying to make.
Okay,
I knew it
all
was
right
going to
then.
be sort of a case in point of the fact that look at what Antonelli's done with essentially a season and a half versus what Norris has been able to achieve in a similar time, and that McLaren has been quick up a lot of points. It's been on podiums. It had a win or two while he was in it, and hadn't taken those wins. So yeah, I don't get why there's so much sort of infighting between Norris and Piastri on track, where it's sort of, oh, I'm quicker, let me pass. I'm like, yeah, I agree with you. If you're quicker, just go and pass him.
It
Um,
feels very much the same as in IndyCar at the moment. They've got Pato, they've had him for ages, they're keeping him. Consequences be damned, we'll get rid of everyone else, but we're keeping him. Same here, it feels like. It doesn't matter how good the other drivers or the driver in this instance is, we've got our man. If there's one thing we want to do, we're not 100% sure what that is, but we want to do it with this driver. And everything else sort of be damned. And I'm sure they would disagree. But there is a messaging issue then, because that's how it's coming across to a lot of people.
yeah, and certainly this season, when you look at the performance that Christian Lundgaard's putting in over Pato O'Ward, and they're going,
Oh,
oh,
yeah.
yeah, we're going to drop Lundgaard because obviously you drop the guy who's in
He could win the
fourth.
championship and then be out of a job.
Yeah, it's not unreasonable. You look at what Pato's done, and again, I like Pato. He's a good driver, but
Oh,
with
yeah. I've got
one,
nothing against him, but it's just weird how, if you're basing it off performance as you should,
yeah, one win at Mid
the
Ohio
numbers speak for
versus
themselves.
Road America and Indy Road Course plus
Indianapolis.
two
Yeah.
further, three further podiums. Sorry, it's yeah. It's such an interesting time at the moment at McLaren. And you just sort of want to go, you just want to shake them all and just go, just
And
behave like adults.
this was the thing, right? The team radio that Oscar had after the signs stuff, which we will get to, was very telling. I thought it was him sort of he was angry and he pulled the mask back or pulled the curtain back really so you could get the inner workings of McLaren a bit more because you could tell that what was meant to be a reassuring team radio to Piastri did the exact opposite because it just revealed that yeah we've worked this into our calculations anyway, which meant we knew we were probably going to dump you in some traffic that you'd have to get through, um, but you should still be fine to get on the podium. But he didn't want a podium; he wanted the win. And whereas we'll leave Norris out as long as we can to capitalize on any kind of advantage we can get from that for this side of the garage. And then, sure enough, it falls into their lap a little bit in that sense. And because Norris does have that pace and whatnot, he is able to then just bugger off up the road by 15 seconds. It's just, again, there's too many things here where, yeah, you argue that's just how it all unfolded, but it's too neat.
Mm.
It's when you come across a crime scene and you just go, all of this it's too black and white.
Yeah, I
It's
think
always the first act of the episode of CSI. You go, well, it can't be this because it's too straightforward and can be done in 10 minutes. That's not what this is normally like.
yeah, I think you were right when you said that McLaren lucked into the fact that Piastri sort of had problems and it sort of awarded them the result they maybe wanted more or had structured their weekend to give more than otherwise.
We haven't heard, at least I haven't heard. Maybe you have the details about the issue specifically about how it came about for Piastri, but I did wonder how much certain other driver driving into the side of him didn't help that issue,
Um,
if
it
at all.
it's to do with the fragileness of that car, the fragility, because they then told Norris to stay off the curbs because it's a gearbox issue
Hmm.
and it's the hydraulic pump that seems to fuel
I just
and
didn't
keeps the
trust that,
gearbox
and I just thought,
pressurized.
is that just something we're saying to cover something else on Team Reggie? McLaren and I have very big trust issues.
It might have been something along those lines. I don't think it'd be unreasonable for you to maybe come to that conclusion. Um, in the fact that sort of a thump in the side is very equivalent to sort of a series of very sharp
We've
and
seen
harsh
cars
curb
retire
bounces.
from that kind from less damage from another driver before, so it just makes me question.
Yeah, was Carlos's bump into Piastri critical in that sense, and they were able to disguise it? But also,
Which
we've
is which
seen,
is me less having a go at McLaren there and more having a go at Sainz, but I'm sure we'll get to that again in
but
terms
also
of
was it
the penalty.
2020, 2021? We saw 2020. It was the opening Austrian Grand Prix where we saw the Mercedes retiring with engine issues because an exhaust sensor was shaken loose over the curbs around the Red Bull ring. And this does happen to cars. It is very reasonable for curb striking to knock parts and sensors awry, loose, wonky, and it forced the car to retire because it thinks it's going wrong or there's something going wrong. And we did see gearbox issues for Piastri stemming a little earlier in the Grand Prix, though. I don't know if you saw how much he was sort of jolting around coming out of the pit lane
Mm.
because the car just wasn't getting into gear and getting drive properly. I think it was just the dog teeth not properly, or the dog gears and the gearbox not meshing properly between synchros. And as a result, it was sort of never finding drive and engaging properly. And that was a problem that maybe just exasperated over the Grand Prix, possibly not helped by being crashed into by Carlos Sainz, possibly otherwise, because the contact with Sainz seemed a bit further
Very
up
little
the
have I
car.
seen it be a benefit to get crashed into.
No, but
I will
also
phrase it like that.
the crash for Piastri happened very much at the front end of his car. And bear in mind these are mid-rear engine cars. The gearbox is all slung out over the rear axle. If he'd been rammed from the rear, different. But anyway, it's all speculation.
Vibrations.
Yeah, bad vibrations. The opposite of the Beach Boys, the mountain girls. Red Bull Racing, currently fourth in the constructor standings.
I love how you didn't even attempt to segue there.
No, I was just like my analogy to the Beach Boys and the inverse of that was so terrible. Red Bull Racing fourth. Verstappen qualifies or starts the race from fourth, finishes second despite his own protestations. Hadjar a slightly rougher qualifying, but qualifies eighth and goes on to rectify it and finish sixth.
Yeah, Verstappen, like you say, is sort of amazed at the result he manages to achieve, despite the fact that someone I saw phrase it earlier as from the outside, it looks fine because he just keeps banging in these podiums. But on the inside, clearly there is a lot that he himself doesn't like. And I don't know if Hadjar feels the same way or not. We don't hear a lot from him on the radio, but I don't know if that's just because of broadcasting. But he just seems to be getting on with the job in hand. And I think he knows that if he plays his cards right, he's going to be at that team a long time. He'll replace Verstappen in a sense. So he can play rear gunner for a bit, learn as much as he can from him, because when the time comes, he will then, in theory, be the number one driver there. So he's, like you were saying, just making it difficult enough for when people come up behind him to get past him. And then still just manages to romp home in sixth and is just being incredibly consistent at the moment, which you've got to enjoy. And then Max just being typical Max. Moans a lot, finishes second. And you go, what are you complaining about? It's fine.
Yeah, it's a very max weekend, really. But yeah, I don't really have anything to say on Max. We've seen this performance from him before. It's nothing new in that sense. And for me, it's just positives for Hadjar as well, just comfortably churning out some.
It feels to me with Verstappen just whenever Hamilton used to say the tyres are dead and then proceeds to do the fastest lap. It's sort of an extreme version of that.
Yes, yeah, it's Max's iteration of tires are gone, Bono, tires are gone. It's just, oh, the damping's terrible, the balance is off, oh, the wings aren't set right, oh, the tires aren't in the right window, oh, I haven't got any brakes underneath me, oh,
Finishes
there's no
second.
power. It's just like the never-ending list of problems he can go off of. And they go, okay, well, do you want to retire the car? Oh, no, I'm just going to start banging in like quality lap times and make some overtakes. I just want you to know that I'm having a horrible time doing it. Or like,
Hmm.
oh, we're supposed to feel sorry for you, right? This it's the Max
Yet
Verstappen
again, we go
typical.
back to that Rowan Atkinson racing driver sketch, and you go, yes, but you came second.
No,
Yes,
that was
but.
Was it Rowan Atkinson that did that? Because I know that Hugh and Laurie did a bit
Yeah,
of
because
fire
Hugh
in
Laurie
Laurie
was
did one as
interviewing
well.
him, I think.
Yes, yeah. It's like you won the race. You and then eventually
Hmm.
just hits him. But for me, Hadjar though, I think is just churning out these absolutely incredible results. Like you look at where Hadjar's season has gone over the past few weekends, dare we say. So
He's
sixth in
getting
Hungary,
really
sixth in
consistent now.
Spa, fifth in Britain, ninth in the sprint race, sixth in Austria, sixth in Barcelona, fourth in Monaco, fifth in Canada. We'll ignore the Canada sprint race, didn't go very well for him. Miami a DNF, Miami sprint ninth, 12th in Japan, not a great outing, but still getting used to things. China eighth, fifth in the China sprint, and DNF in Australia. So if you look at that progression though over time, the fact that he's just gone, oh, this is a lot too. Okay, I think I've got a handle on this too. I'm just going to keep what we're supposed to be a top three team. Right? I'm just going to keep banging in that top six of the field.
Hmm,
Then cool. That's all you need from me. I'm just going to keep doing this. And yeah, he's there in qualifying when they need him to tow Verstappen, and he's there when he needs to slow people down so Verstappen can either have a bit of free air or get past them. It's exactly what Red Bull needs from him, and it's
Pimples.
so easy. Yeah, it's much like with racing bulls. There's nothing to say in an incredibly positive sense. You're just doing everything that you
Yeah,
do. Speaking of racing bulls.
Racing Bulls, another double points finish for the team. And I know it's not a continuation of the streak they were having, but it's just how quickly they bounced back from not having that to then having it again.
Yeah, just
And
shaking it off
they could
and
go on another run after the summer
yeah,
break and just keep it going. And you go, lovely. And they've
yeah.
overtaken Alpine in the constructors' standings now, which I find really interesting, especially with where Alpine were this weekend, which was nowhere
Mm.
unless you get to the barriers in Colapinto's case in, what was it, qualifying or practice. Um, and you look at Racing Bulls is for me the Ferrari of the rest of the field because they're just consistently there. Their bad weekends are still not bad, and the rest of the time they're just pumping in the points, pumping in the results, and it's enough to keep them ahead overall. You know, to climb back up after a tricky start and then just lock in and overtake, and that's what they've done now. And in theory, it's up to Alpine to find a lot of development because Racing Bulls are just they bring the developments too, but they're doing it in such a neat way that it's just helping push them much further forward.
Yeah, it's yeah. Lawson qualifies 11th, finishes 8th. Lindblad qualifies 9th, finishes 10th. Just putting in some really good results. And again, there's nothing to say about the team because there's nothing critical to say about the team because they're doing everything they need to do
Mm.
right. And that in itself is a positive. It's just sort of we're here as critics more often than not. And when the critics have nothing bad to
Well,
say
we're
about
getting there.
what you do, that's good news. So well done, Racing Bulls. You've failed to earn our ire in any way. Alpine, however, Gasly qualifies 12th, finishes 12th. Colapinto qualifies 13th, finishes 15th. Mm,
I know you were busy this weekend, so you may not have seen this, but if you can find Ted's notebook post qualifying and just skip forward a bit, I don't know what point I came into it, but the whole weekend I feel like was best encapsulated by just a randomly wandering around Flavio Briatore, not really appearing to know where he was going, just kind of doddering around. You could tell he's aged a lot since his heyday here because it just if you didn't know who he was, you'd go, someone should help him. He seems to just be staggering around a bit aimlessly, which just felt like Alpine this weekend.
yeah,
We're here and we're here to do stuff. We're just not going to really do much of anything aside from hit the barriers.
I say this coming from a place of sort of familiarity where um occasionally as people get older, you occasionally just sort of encounter them at times when they're a little bit senile, and maybe we're just seeing that happen sort of every other weekend with Briatore. Just sort of occasionally we sort of just see him where he's just dissociated a little bit, and you're just sort of like, "You okay? Do you want to have a sit down, a little blanket put over your knees, and a cup of tea?" It's yeah. Um, yeah, something needs to come for the car though, because it's a slippery slope if you can't keep up with the upgrades battle. You've only got to ask Williams about that. And there's
Williams have upgrade.
well, no, well, we'll get to Williams' fact they've got upgrades coming, but they don't think the upgrades are going to be enough. And I think that Alpine are currently falling into that trap of they they started with a really good car. Congratulations, they forgot to do the sort of improvements. Oh, it's so good. Yeah,
They've
but
done the Ferrari method from yesteryear of this is the car for the year. It'll be
yes,
fine.
it is I can imagine it being a very Briatore thing of going, no, we've made the car. And you go, okay, are you going to bring any upgrades
Would you
for
like
it?
to improve it?
No, we've made it good. And like, okay, but the other teams might get gooder. And he's like, no, they won't. And like, okay, you're a bit delusional there, Flav. Perhaps the signs were there all along. Anyway, There's nothing much more to say really about Alpine. I think Haas is going to be a relatively short section in the podcast as well. Behrman qualifies 17th, finishes 19th. Ocon qualifies 15th, finishes 16th. Both going backwards, and you had a driver way ahead of you retiring from the race. Isn't a good look.
Yeah. For all this, Aston Martin, both of them finished ahead of Haas this weekend. That really just says everything.
Yeah, it's. Mm, I've written the note here. You are the skimmed milk of racing. You
Did
currently
make me
offer
smoke when I read that earlier.
you currently offer nothing but sort of just simply shelf filling. It's
I like the livery, which I hate that the last few years I've had at least one team to say that about, if nothing else, but we've got a very, very lovely livery.
yeah, that is.
You don't have to struggle through finding anything else. We can move on. I just
Yeah,
wanted to find something positive to say.
we'll move on. Audi, where we actually get something positive to say. Hulkenberg qualifies 10th, finishes 9th. Bortoleto, a little bit off the pace in qualifying, qualifies 14th, finishes 11th though, recovers it quite nicely. I think this is really good for Audi.
Yeah, almost a double point finish for the team. They were jousting away for it at the end. It was just the leaders coming through that was buggering everything up for them. But Hulkenberg first points of the year, finally, and moves past Alonso in the championship standings. It's kind of typical. Aston Martin bring these massive upgrades. They work brilliantly in a lot of ways, and yet Hulkenberg still manages to go, no, I'm taking 200% more points than you've had all season in this one race, and I'll move ahead of you in the standings. Game on.
It's
And I think they've moved ahead of Williams now in the standings as well, which was kind of what I was hoping they would do in Spa with Hulkenberg. It's happened now with Hulkenberg in a different way, but I'm claiming slight manifestation credit for that one.
Yeah, manifestation credit awarded. They have moved ahead of Williams in the overall standings here. Lovely stuff to see. A little bit anonymous on the broadcast, from what I could tell. There was sort of like occasionally we get like a replay or a picture-in-picture view of things going on, but it's a solid car that's developing nicely. And again, this is the thing we're seeing with not a lot of the teams where they're not able to develop the car, they haven't picked the right development pathways. Audi have just slowly been building a little bit here and there and just keeping on top of it and moving the car forwards.
They
And
feel like a lesser Racing Bulls.
yes, yeah, it's a dilute version of sort of Ferrari as well, but Ferrari haven't been moving forwards with theirs, they've been maintaining pace.
Yeah, you've got the three stages of Ferrari. You've got Ferrari, you've got Racing Bulls, then you've got Audi.
Yeah, where they've all sort of brought upgrades and are all seeing sort of relative improvements off the back of it, and they're all doing it in a relatively sensible way, in the opposite sense to the likes of Haas, Alpine, and Williams, and Cadillac seemingly at the moment as well, who have brought upgrades and not seen any positive benefits from it. So, I mean, it does link into Williams quite nicely, where Sainz qualifies 18th, finishes 18th, and Albon qualifies 19th and finishes 17th.
Forgotten about science for a minute, and it was really nice. Oh, what the actual expletive was he thinking? Because I know just so many questions, and I do not buy any of the excuses that he's come up with. And it wasn't even just let's just assume that they did just have flags at certain points of the track. You can still see those, and you should still be keeping an eye out for them. They haven't just introduced flags for the first time this weekend. What's more, you remember watching in the present moment when Piastri was coming up behind him going into turn two, and the little box for the side of the track there was working. You could see blue flags being flashed, and it's pretty obvious to see there because there's just so little else kind of to obscure your view of it. Not that they purposely try and hide them anyway, but it's very obvious. Also, the fact that you got this very clear view down the start finish straight of this bright orange car coming towards you, which then is also right behind you in mirrors going down to turn two. So to then go, oh, he was in a blind spot. You know he's there because he's just been chasing you down these two long straights. How would you not have the like awareness of him being there the entire time when you are this seasoned a driver? You're a multiple Grand Prix winner. And also, let's just assume that he's just forgotten all of this stuff and he doesn't know how to drive. Why the hell did the team not tell him? in a weekend where afterwards I found a hilarious thing earlier. Williams posting radio exchange between Vowles and Albon, congratulating each other on how much better the communication is. Going, you've got that maybe on one car. Questions about the second one. But I think the main thing for me, before I finish the mini rant, is 5 seconds. What a joke of a penalty. You saw wildly inconsistent stuff all weekend. We didn't see it on the broadcast. I need to go and see if I can find a clip of it somewhere. But in Formula 2, Herta got overtaken by Dunn. Then somehow Herta got a 10-second time penalty for leaving the track and gaining an advantage despite going backwards. Then in Formula 3, someone overtook someone off the track, gained advantage. That was a 5-second time penalty for the exact same thing. And then you get a driver literally who's being lapped, drives into another driver, contributing in some way, even if not the gearbox, to taking him out of the race. Because I still say that getting driven into doesn't exactly help your car's general structure. And that's a 5-second penalty? You joking? What the hell?
Yeah. So the thing that I'm about to say is really going to help your position on Sainz, especially because Sainz refused to apologize for it as well.
Oh yeah, he said, "I'm sorry, Piastri had bad luck." I'm like, bad luck? You drove into
Drove into him.
him.
This is the direct transcript from Ollie Behrman at the end of the race. So race finishes, Ollie Behrman crosses the line. He goes on the
We've got
radio
something
and said,
positive to say about Haas potentially.
"Yeah."
Excellent.
Ollie goes, "That was a tough day. Sorry for the spin in turn two. Totally caught me off guard." To which Ronan, his race engineer, goes, "It's P19. Unfortunately, we got a 5-second penalty for ignoring blue flags." Ollie's reply, "Oh my God, the blue flags were a mess this whole race. Sorry to whoever I ignored." He at least takes it on the chin and goes, "Oh, bollocks, I screwed up there. I'm sorry." And it is like, yeah,
See how easy that is?
yeah, it was a problem. I admit that the red flags weren't good, and they did have to resort to just using the old canvas flags from marshalling post. However, Ollie at least shouldered the
Ollie, in his
responsibility.
second season, Behrman knows how to do this versus 10 plus years in the sport, multiple teams and Grand Prix wins. Carlos Sainz.
Carlos Sainz is also 31. Remind me how old Ollie Behrman is?
12.
21. Someone 10 years your senior with so much more experience in Formula One doesn't have the balls to shoulder the responsibility. And also, Sainz has been racing long enough to the point that flags will have been the main way that you were signaled you were under blue flags, like a proper old canvas flag. This won't be something that he is new to.
Plus, the whole blind spot thing, don't buy either because you go back to a race like Singapore 23, he knows where every single one of those three drivers is behind him precisely
Yeah, when he's
and
towing
keeps them
Norris
all
as defense.
perfectly. Yeah,
Yeah,
he knows exactly what he's doing the whole time. And you go, you've just forgotten how to do that in less than 3 years? I don't think so.
yeah,
I
it's
get you're annoyed with where Williams are at the moment and you're apparently out of options for being able to move anywhere else. But really, you're just going to take it out by driving into one of the teams that you should have maybe stayed with instead of jumping ship?
yeah, just going to crash into people and be mean about it. It's truly bizarre behavior, and yeah, I don't know.
And then the lack of a penalty afterwards with the stewards, and you go, what on earth is that about? It's the same. Hamilton gets a 5 second penalty for speeding by 0.1% or whatever it was in the pit lane, and that's apparently the same. That's on the same level as driving into an opponent. Not even an opponent. He's not even racing him. He's being
Yeah,
lapped.
yeah, it mad.
Absolute bollocks.
And to make life worse for Williams, their Baku upgrade package is not set to bring the pace they need, and this could be a very exhausting season for Williams as they struggle to get to grips with the regulations. They
Well,
know
we're used
they're
we're used to struggling years for Williams. We're all going to age about 20 years by the end of it.
yeah.
Carlos is going to look like his dad by December.
Mind you, opposite to that, Aston Martin, we finally actually have something to say. Alonso
And it's good.
qualifies, yeah, Alonso qualifies 16th and moves forward in the race to 14th. Stroll qualifies 20th and moves up to 13th place.
Typical Stroll for his 200th Grand Prix. Still doesn't score any points, so it's cementing the 33% rule that I'm going to keep a close eye on from now on. But then somehow finished ahead of Alonso. But first Q2 appearance, a lot close to the points. You think about how big a step that is. And Alonso was saying prior to the weekend that he's going to stay. He's reaffirming yet again that he's going to stay with Aston Martin because he knows that Adrian Newey will build a good car sooner or later. If they can combine this with, as we were saying in the preview, their engine upgrade for Zandvoort, you could get a really rogue left field driver in Alonso fighting for points, maybe even dare say podiums, which is going to really piss off everyone ahead of him because he's got nothing to lose, everything to gain. He's not going to get a championship this year. He's not going to get a win, but he's going to potentially be in a position to just stick a bunch of sticks in people's eyes and go, I can just be pure chaos in the same way that I was in Budapest in 21.
Yeah, it's going to be really exciting watching what happens because also there's a Honda upgrade for the engine coming soon that's supposed to halve the
So I was saying
deficit
in
to the rest of
Zandvoort,
the
yeah.
field. And that's again, if they're now
If that
able to,
works,
yeah, if they're now able to not just go around corners but also go in a straight line quickly, this is going to be really exciting watching finally what happens as the Aston Martin comes alive a bit and its progress. And I think that's the really important thing is so often we are quick to chastise when people screw up and don't do well. I think it'd be nice to take a brief moment. Not that it's unlikely that Adrian Newey is going to listen to this podcast. It's nice to
we
take a
shall
moment.
badger him with emails until he does. Listen to
It's
this
nice
one
to
bit,
yeah,
nothing
there's one
else.
bit. It's nice to take a moment to praise him for doing well and finally turning around the problems. Um, so they've got into gear and they can now start hunting down a bit more performance, which is really good. The other thing that I like, going back quickly to the Williams thing, I like was obviously the clearly barbed remark from Toto Wolff about the other
Hmm.
Teletubby team principals that sit there on the wall doing nothing. And you're like, that's such a great line. I love it. It's so
Especially
you
because you know how
call
much
them.
he would absolutely flip if someone said that about him.
Oh yeah, but also on the
If
one
Christian
hand,
Horner had said that about him 2 years ago, he'd be decking him in the
he
streets,
there
Rocky
would be a
Five style.
there would be a Christian Horner shaped smear across the tarmac somewhere. But it's great because it's brilliantly two-pronged in both calling them a children's as useless as an oversized children's character, but also Teletubbies is sort of like fat. You can dissect it as a phrase that means sort of quite fat, useless, and just glued to watching the screens, unaware of the world around you as
Hmm.
well, which is quite a funny way of criticizing all the other teams. And he said it's all the other teams that just sit there on the pit wall like Teletubbies, just watching the monitor and not actually looking up and watching the race as it goes by. And yeah, I just thought I just wanted to put that in there because I thought that was very clever from Toto Wolff. And oh, Cadillac, you're now at the bottom of the list for good. Also, both your drivers having qualified 21st and 22nd for Bottas and Perez, and then double DNFing, combined with both Aston Martins actually having good results, now means that on count back, both your drivers are last in the drivers' standings as well.
Yeah, it's not great, and they really do need to sort the brake and suspension issues out because those are sort of issues. But I feel like I'm gonna give them a lot of grace this season. If they're still in this position this time next year, I will be less kind. But I am going to be nice to them, barring any major catastrophes, until whenever the end of the season is, wherever that is, because I just think that they knew that it was going to be a big hill to climb up, and it is proving that. And they're sure finding out ways that don't work. And once they've exhausted all of those, they all hit on something that does. And when they do, that's going to be quite exciting because we got to see both their cars in qualifying a little bit more on the broadcast, which was just nice. Again, a little bit like in Spa. And it was just nice to see fresh paint and fresh team going around. And I want them to do well. So, yeah, big issues, but they have the best excuse for it. Whereas Aston Martin and Williams and the like, they don't and didn't.
Yeah, it's they're at least trying. Every weekend you get the sense that they've sort of come up with a new idea and they're going to give it a go, which I appreciate. But like they do, and genuinely they have. They've had so many different brake layouts
I'm
and brake
waiting for the
systems.
idea to be Terry Crews just yeets the car as far as he can throw it
That would
and
only
go,
work
right.
if you're racing in a straight line though.
Yeah, where was that track in Germany from yesteryear?
Oh,
Or was it just two
Avasring.
straights?
Yeah.
There
Because
we go.
it's banked enough that like a
We should go
scale,
there in December.
yeah, it's banked enough that like a Hot Wheels car, it would sort of get
We can
to
get
banking
John
and come down
Cena at the
behind
other
it,
end to catch and then just lob it
throw it
back
back
and just
again.
keep going.
Maybe that would work. Maybe that would work. Yeah, there's so many problems with that car that I don't know where they're thinking to start because obviously their carbon bonding and their suspension structuring and layout and shaping isn't right either because that seems to just fall apart. And then it's definitely their carbon because they end up with so many bits breaking. And also the fact the brake issues are bad. Like we thought Ferrari was bad, where Charles Leclerc was like, "Oh, I don't like the feel under the pedal." At least it's not catching fire to the point that Valtteri Bottas had to crash into the pit in wall to slow down because he had no
Well,
brake
it was the
whatsoever.
initial thing of, oh, so you said brake issues. You saw the car and it wasn't immediate. And you go, yeah, you could, you'll make it back. The problem then you just see the whole thing just catch right. I was like, oh no, no, that's not good. All
No,
right, no, that's fair enough.
that fire is
Better
getting
retire that.
fire is getting bigger and bigger. You're going to have to really stop the car. So he literally rubs it along the pit-in wall
Hmm.
until eventually, and then eventually just gives it one final thunk until it stops. But also, he's the first person to get a fire extinguisher on that car, which is great. And I appreciate that racing is very difficult. You have different marshals for different things, but I must have known there was a fire extinguisher there because he jumps
Yeah,
out of
probably
the
put
car,
it there earlier.
immediately picks it up, and he is gunning the left-hand front wheel before the fire marshals have got to it. And you see him literally sort of just do both sides, put it down, and walk off. And you're like, "Oh, God bless you, Valtteri Bottas." Anyway, with that, we said at the beginning of this we weren't going to take too long doing this, but it was 6 minutes past
We
eight when
say
we
that a lot of
started.
time.
We're an
Yeah.
hour and six in, and we've got to winners and spinners. It's not too bad. Winner this weekend, Thiemo.
Nico Hulkenberg. Double points in my view there because he got multiple points. Double points for Hulkenberg. Excellent stuff.
Lovely. Yeah, I enjoyed that too. For me, Aston Martin, a bit of a hear me out, but I like it when teams actually do good. And given that their baseline was
I
pretty
want
low,
them to do well.
yeah, I'm pleased that they have moved forward a bit. So yeah, I like it. I'm pleased with that and want them to do that again. If they could keep sort of
Hmm.
shuffling forwards a little bit by little bit. Zandvoort's going to be really interesting. Like you said, they've got the Honda upgrade coming that should just give them a bit more pep. And also, Alonso's start was pretty good. I don't know if you watched back his start before
Yeah,
he was on board. Like the car launches quite all right. It's just the sort of top end where it really starts to bog down a bit.
because
So
that was the real question. We're going, oh, is it just one lap pace, or can they actually survive a Grand Prix relatively near points? And you're like, oh, okay, you've done all right,
the fact that Lance Stroll was able to make a lot of overtakes and actually get his car up to where that pace suggests it should be is indicative that
and
with
didn't require them all to retire.
no,
Even more important.
no, there was only one retirement, and that wasn't really one he had to worry about overtaking. But does this also mean we're now going to have to bin off our predictions for when does the Aston Martin get lapped, or do we make it when does the Cadillac retire?
No, because I don't want to be that mean to Cadillac. Aston Martin, the amount of money they're pumping into that team, kind of, it's fair to take the piss out of them.
With Cadillac, it's
Cadillac,
punching
less
down.
so.
With Aston Martin, it's
Yeah,
punching up, and that's the way that British comedy works. You're not allowed to punch
yeah,
down.
yeah. I mean, like, we'll have to think about that over the summer break, and we'll come back to that.
And we say punching down like it's bad to be rude to a series of multimillionaires and their Formula One team, but oh well. Um,
Yeah, but they're nice.
Spinners, Timo,
Absolutely Carlos Sainz and absolutely the stewards. Because what on earth? What a joke. When
reasonable.
I can find a non-sweary way of writing about it, I might.
Get back to me on that one. For
Maybe a
me,
while.
I'm gonna go for Williams because I it shouldn't be going this wrong for you. You're Williams. You're supposed to be better than this. But then again, the past decade and a half really should be evidence that maybe it can.
Yeah, I don't know what to do with them because you just want anything good to happen. And you look at Albon and you think, okay, here's Team Radio at the end. He's very kind and complimentary and going, yep, he's really taking it a lot better than he should in theory. And you go, at least the drivers are being good about it. They're kind of doing what Bottas and Perez are doing. And you go, yep, it is what it is. We're working hard. We'll figure it out. Da, 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 da. And science comes in and you go, son of a. And you go, well, at least Albon's still the nice kid. He's been a good boy.
Yeah. I mean, if you look back at like the GPS tracker for it, I'll hold it up so you can see at least on the screen. You can see that there are problems where cars just sort of keep jumping around the grid, and this was the cause of the blue flag issues. I'm not trying to agree with what science did. I'm just saying there were mitigating circumstances. He still shouldn't have crashed into Oscar Piastri, but the problem was that GPS locators weren't properly triggering, and therefore the blue flag panels weren't officially lighting up when that car that needed to be blue flagged got to that mini sector. Just for also clarity for listeners as well. Um, Anyway, with that out of the way, predictions review, 0 points for everyone. We can move on to fantasy F1 review.
I
Um,
maintain my lead into the summer break.
you maintain your lead in the summer break, your lead of one. Congratulations. It's like there's one of the feeder series that's relatively close at the top at the moment. Is it 3 or 2? I can't remember.
Freddie Slater. I've done to you what Freddie Slater did to Ugo. I've got you just before the summer break.
Much like Ugo Chukwu, I'm going to have to sit and stew on that until we come back in Zandvoort. Is F3 back in Zandvoort, or is it they wait till Monza?
No Monza.
Or that's kind of a long
Only
summer
two
break.
rounds left.
Yeah, Monza, and then off to the Mad Ring, which that's going to be a hell of a weekend to watch. Um, anyway, fantasy F1 review for Budapest. Tika Taka F1, 232 points. Jaffa Cake Racing, let's go, 225 points. And Dershfall Team, 218 points. Blink, 182 kilometers an hour, P7. On the Curbs, P14. The Haas Plan, P26. And the worst of all possible options, P29, with 12 points, thanks to Stroll double points. The problem we've got now is that
Yes.
we can't.
Aston
There's no more.
Martin might be doing all right.
Yeah,
It was the amusing thing of Cadillac really helped us because Aston Martin as a team scored 37 points. And then Cadillac scored minus 36, so it essentially cancelled it out. But then we still got both Aston Martin drivers. So, yeah, I'd say we give it a couple of races, and then we're going to have to really think about what to do about that.
yeah. It's we're gonna have to start picking
Have to
on.
sub them in for Haas and Williams, I think, unfortunately.
Ooh, I think that might be the play. Yeah. We'll see how that plans out moving forwards. Overall, though, Dutch full team 2,500 points, Sabonius Racing 2,348 points, and Jaffa Cake Racing we're still in the top three. Let's go, 2,290 points. Sorry, on Melancholy Grid P5, on the Curve P17, the Haas Plan P24, and the worst of all possible options P29, but have now added points, so back up to about 258. So yeah, we're gonna have to
Staying
rethink our
afloat. Still
strategy.
about 700 points gap to the next team ahead of them, so they're not at risk of proper improvement, but we want to keep an eye on that.
Yeah, we don't want anyone else to catch us up on a slide to the bottom. Um, anyway, that's all we've got time for on this episode of the Undercut Podcast. We'll be back to preview the next Grand Prix in Zandvoort. Uh, I won't say fairly soon. We've got the summer break to get through. Are we going to do any summer break content?
Find out.
Yeah, we'll see if we can be bothered. We might be back. Until then, though, there'll be plenty from the two of us. Thiemo, if people want more from you, where can it be found?
This week, I've got an interview with medical delegate Camilla Sofia Perigo over on Public Influence. Got some Kyoto Cup analysis on its race week and two interviews on the curves with Kelsey Pinkowski, also in the Kyoto Cup, and with Lebanese racing driver Lim Kazan on Instagram. On the curves for
Lovely.
everything.
Lovely stuff. And in the meantime, if you want more from me, you can find me writing for Classic Car Weekly. The latest issue will be out when a day after this podcast goes live. You can also listen to the Classic Car Weekly podcast on the internet. And you can also find me on the internet as at Jesse on Cars on Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok. There's fresh content out from the Festival of the Unexceptional and the BRDC Classic at Silverstone. And there'll probably be more. I can't think what I'm up to this weekend. Nothing hugely important, but then I know there's more racing and car show stuff still to come. So there's hopefully going to be some TikToks coming out soon. I owe some TikToks to people, so plenty more still to come. Otherwise, we'll be back with a preview for Dutch Grand Prix in what, 4 weeks' time?
Yeah, that month.
That sounds about right. Enjoy the summer break.